tea time.
Welcome everybody, Souldin of the Grin Brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, for today's tea, because I want to cut to the chase, I'm rehaving an old tea that I've already had on the show before, English rose tea. It's just basically English breakfast with a flavouring. A flavouring apparently of rose, but I didn't really realise rose flowers were something you could eat, but hey ho. But I hadn't actually listed the information down in my tea book, so it's also a good reason to have it again so I can do all that. A village tea ideal for enjoying alongside scones and strawberry jam. I don't have either of those with me at the moment. But for this tea, I've brewed it for I think 3 or 4 minutes, and it's 5 minutes maximum, 3 minutes minimum. I've brewed it for about 4 minutes and I've added milk to it. It's a black tea after all, so that's perfectly okay. But yeah, again, I'm having this tea because I kind of want to cut to the chase. Though speaking of which, a bit of an explanation. Usually at this time of year I do my top 6 favourite video games of the year. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't been that focused on investing my time in the video games that I've actually released in 2017. In fact, it's kind of been hard to keep a grasp on what was going on in the general gaming scene for some reason. I mean, for some reason I'm aware of plenty of reasons that this could be the case of why I haven't been able to stick with it with a lot of the games that I've got this year, get around to them and such. But for this tea time, I'm actually going to be focusing on one specific reason why I haven't actually paid that much attention to the games, as much attention as I usually do to the games that I've played this year, and why I don't feel comfortable doing a top 6 favourite video games of this year. Is basically because there was something that took most of my attention this year. I'm glad it did, because it was a very enjoyable experience. I've mentioned it once or twice before, but I feel now's a good time to make a video on it as the new year hits, and to really sort of delve into it for a good 15 minutes. That subject is Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure. Again, anyone who's watching my Grim Bros videos and a few of my tea times will know that I have mentioned this series quite a few times. And so I guess I should explain what Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure is from the beginning. Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure is an interactive Pokémon Yellow playthrough with a story to it. Basically, it's me playing Pokémon Yellow, but the main character is Nanka, as if she were part of that world, and there's a story that goes on throughout it. However, inspired by Choose Your Own Adventures books, this is a story wherein the reader at the time had a choice, had a ability to interact within the story when questions pop up. Questions being as small as naming a Pokemon, or which stone evolution to have Eevee take and such. The story wasn't always quite so direct with that. There was also a lot of subtle questions to it, and there was also a lot of things sort of done differently to how you normally play. For instance, I had to take things from the perspective of Nanka with it, and so the things that she wouldn't know, but I, as someone who's played through the game, would know. And so I'd have Nanka in the game itself experiment with those things and find out what works and what doesn't work. For instance, a move, she doesn't know what it does, so of course she has her Pokemon try out to learn what it does. I, of course, already know what it does, but she wouldn't have. And, she'd learn through trial and error, and, there'd be areas where she had no clue to go to, but I, of course, did. For instance, where do you get Flash? Well, that's a long process that's really kind of annoying to learn about, really. They don't really give you a clear sort of, hey, this is where Flash is. They just say the aid has it and then give you no direction to it. So that took a little bit longer in having to try to construct a manner of which for Nanka to go down that path. But yeah, that is Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure sort of concept. It was a Pokémon Yellow playthrough with a story inspired by Choose Your Own Adventure books. It was, of course, as notable from the Miiverse part of it, something I did on the Nintendo social media site Miiverse, because I felt it was something very fitting for it. Sadly now, Miiverse is long gone, so although I have intentions to do more Nanka's Miiverse adventures, Miiverse is going to be simply there in tribute to it, because I will have to think of another way to distribute it rather than Miiverse. Which is a shame, because the construct of it on how I deliver the questions and the limitations of having only 400 word characters and all that were, the way I sort of organised it was based off what are the limitations of Miiverse, how does Miiverse work and such. and I felt there was a lot of benefits to it. Miiverse was certainly a good community for having both the drawings, namely I learnt to draw with the gamepad, and a quick sort of method to also put the story post up to, as well as including screenshots with it. Now if I were to do it in future, I wouldn't be able to use screenshots with it, but yeah, you know. But yeah, Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure. It was a Pokemon Yellow playthrough I started last year on Bonfire Night, and okay, by the time this video uploads, it will be the next year, so the last year, 2016. And I originally came up with the idea. It was originally going to be a Nuzlocke, actually. I was originally thinking of, I'm getting a little bit bored of playing through the Pokemon games. Maybe I should try doing a Nuzlocke first for the thing. But I also kind of wanted to retell my tale to people via Miiverse. But I realised that Nuzlockes never ever make any sense when you do it as a story, because the concept of trainers killing other Pokemon and such, you know, there's too many plot holes, I feel, spring forth from it. So I went back to the drawing board on that idea, and I remembered in my childhood in game, they had these Pokemon guidebooks, which at the time I didn't know were guidebooks because I was like 8. I thought the guidebooks were just magazines, and these were proper sort of hardcover sort of books or things. So I thought they were stories, and I thought it was someone telling their own Pokemon playthrough as a novel sort of thing. And although now I know that is just a guide in the form of a better looking book rather than a magazine, that was kind of what I went back to, and that's thought, well, why shouldn't I do that? You know, make a novel of my Pokemon playthrough. But of course it's Miiverse, and you know, people will be reading it and such, so I thought, hey, let's make it interactive. And so I started coming up with questions and all that for it, and it's funny how the questions go. Like, I initially had planned only like really sort of vague questions, like, oh, how many items should I buy and stuff like that. But in the end, I ended up having to ask questions less about the purchases of items, like the sort of potions and such, and more about certain events. Like, I'd sometimes be indecisive about what move to teach a Pokemon, and so I'd ask it as a question to the audience, and they'd respond. And whenever I got a TM, I'd ask it as a question. There was a lot of hilarity to it. Like, sometimes people would do decisions that I really wanted, such as holding off on giving Jigglypuff a Moonstone until Jigglypuff learned Body Slam. Thank you so much for that. Other times, I'm sure they were deliberately going out of their way to screw with me, because my readers had me teach Mega Drain to Weeping Bell instead of Golbat. It's like Golbat has a surprisingly good special stat in Red and Blue and Yellow, and the one special move it can learn, they teach to Weeping Bell, and who already learnt Razor Leaf and, you know, better moves than having it with Mega Drain. Oh gosh, that was a nightmare. Or stuff like having Earthquake on Nidoqueen. Good move, but that means Rhyhorn has no ground moves at all. My Rhyhorn was a little less, generally not as useful as I could have hoped for. But that was kind of the fun of it. You know, it added a bit of challenge to a game that, you know, I've felt that the Pokemon games have gone a bit too easy, and having decisions made out by readers and them not always being the best of decisions really helped. You know, limiting myself in additional ways, such as trying not to use items in battle, because I thought the trainers didn't ever use items in battle in Red, Blue, Yellow, but no, it turns out the enemies do, because Blaine suddenly used a Hyper Potion, and I'm like, what? He can do that? They can use items in battle? But I never knew that. I thought X items were the only ones they could use in battle. That was a big surprise. But yeah, it was just going to be a small sort of thing to do every now and again. I figured I'd have to wait a while to receive the answers to the questions, but I ended up really delving into it around... Well, first off, I wanted to promote it via drawings, because drawings are a good way to catch people's eyes. My art skills are terrible and I didn't care much for art at all. And it's funny how the series goes. You'll see by now that throughout this video I've had some of my artwork display, and you'll see that throughout time my skills ended up improving. And it's quite strange. I was really only just doing the art for promotional purposes, and as such I wasn't putting much effort to it. I was mostly just quick little doodles. Oh, this looks like a nice idea, I'll just draw this real quickly, sort of thing. You know, half hour sort of thing, or attempt to half an hour. There, done, I go, sort of thing. Let's get on with the thing I really enjoy about, which is actually playing the game and the story writing. But one of the Miiverse commentators, HP, started commenting on my art quite a bit, and I ended up looking at her and one thing led to another, and I ended up wanting to improve my art. Mostly from her words and her sort of always commenting regarding my art. Or she always made sure to mention it, liking it and such. And so I actually put a genuine effort into improving my art. I looked at what other people were doing on Miiverse and basically attempted to copy it myself. I actually looked up references. I've typed in Pokemon Trainer Leaf because Nanka was dressed up in the Pokemon Trainer Leaf clothes so many times into Google, like thousands of times during the course of the year. And yeah, I genuinely improved. And although I'm not a fan of art, I was actually starting to enjoy it to a degree because the ideas I'd have in my head, I could actually bring forth onto gamepad. I was going to say paper, but obviously I wasn't doing paper. The problem with drawing to me is that unlike writing, I can think of the words, and when I write them, the words are the words I thought in my head sort of thing. Maybe even better. But when I think of a drawing, it's always so much better than what I could actually ever do with my hands. And whilst I could never match up to what I'd visualise, I still was able to get something close to what I wanted to, still convey the image in my head. And that's thanks to improving over time. But yeah, as said, originally the Miiverse Venture thing was only going to be a little side project, but I ended up really throwing myself into it. Namely because originally the story segments was just, the little things, mostly as little comedy moments sort of thing. But after Act 2, I had this sequence wherein I played a bit more with the rocket thief who steals TM Dig and sort of thing. Had a whole little story element of him stealing Nanka's Sandshrew and at the time her clothes. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I'll be re-uploading the story at some point, the completed story, onto various sites. So I'll be sure to mention it during Grim Brothers and Tea Time whenever that's ready. But I ended up sort of doing a bit more story in that point, and the readers really liked it. So after that, I ended up focusing more and more on story, to the point whereas Act 1 was like only a few little posts, like here and there, and not much detail, whereas like I had to take, like it took like 30 posts to do each Elite Four battle, because of the amount of detail I'd go into describing the fights and even just the character interactions at the start and end of it. And yeah, the fact that I was having to put so much time into it, waiting for times when the internet was working as well, wasn't ever planned. A lot of it wasn't planned. A lot of it I had to think off the fly, particularly the story, because I was playing through the game at the time. Whatever I sort of experienced in the game, whenever I saw a key moment of, I need to jot this down, I'd have to think of the words off the top of my head. I think Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure was really good for improvising with writing. I feel I've actually improved in a sense in my own writing skills as a result of Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure, because I kept on having to think of things on the fly. Although sometimes it didn't work like that way. Sometimes I'd stop and be like an hour sitting down in the middle of a battle, and then I'd finish this one sort of paragraph, upload it. Then I'd go back to the sort of match. Another scheme would happen. I'd go back and start pondering, pause, go to Miiverse and see about what to put up for the post again, having to think of what to write. Sometimes there were little blocks like that, but I'd always overcome them. And I guess there was a good motive to overcome them because I had such an enjoyable audience of readership who really liked where it was going. They were always eager to comment and such. And yeah, whilst I'm here, I might as well give a shout out to them. Shout out to Gage, Red, Region Rune, HB, Pookie, Samuel, and Zorhax, I think that's the last one was Zorhax, for making Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure even more fun than I'd initially intended. Because a big part of what made it so fun was that I had people that I was interacting with. It's actually an element which I feel has been making gaming less enjoyable with the lack of Miiverse. I haven't been interacting with people as I play games, and I felt that's a really key experience that I feel was, that key sort of little social experience kind of lacking now when I play games and such. But Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure really drove home what I enjoy about it. And of course I had people enjoying my writing much like back in my days of fanfiction and such. So yeah, it was lovely. Yeah. Another cool sort of aspect of Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure is that I didn't sort of like intend to catch certain Pokemon. Even the choice of what game I was playing, which was Pokemon Yellow, I left up to the readership. So of course I started with Pikachu. The first Pokemon was a random encounter sort of thing, but it was based off of where shall I go to first, Viridian Forest or Route 21 or whatever it's called. And ended up on Viridian Forest, got Cappy as my first catch sort of thing, and named her Dusty and such. And over time, of course, as I caught these Pokemon, some of which got to be named, I'd ask questions of which area should I go to? First one found, that's what I catch. Or go to an area and ask, okay, which of these so many Pokemon should I catch? Sandshrew and Zubat ended up being choices made. There were some I never even intended to be optional, like I was going to ignore Eevee entirely, but the readership wanted it so much for Nanka to have an Eevee. But I've always felt a bit weird because that was G-Man's signature Pokemon. That was actually the first question of the series, once after the whole watch version sort of question, was actually what to name the rival, and they ended up going with G-Man. A lot of things changed with the story elements. I managed to get my own sort of depiction of a lot of the sort of gym leaders and such as Sabrina. I sort of added in an element of how she did want to become an actress sort of thing. And it's funny because it ends up in a weird sort of dressing up section of Nanka, which you'll have seen a few of the drawings, which are actually Sabrina's dressing up Nanka in various outfits sort of sequence. That was actually really weird. I let people ask, what do you want me to draw? I did commissions. That was very stressful, actually. Lovely, the results. There are some brilliant results, but very stressful trying to do those drawings. Yeah, and Giovanni, I got to depict him in a certainly more ruthless way in some areas, sort of emphasise his whole power motif sort of to him. Some characters I just played around with jokes, and others, I really got to add to them, had little spins on them. G-Man was a bigger sort of focus in the end, again, which was a really big shift in focus with him, because I was originally going to set him up as just a jerk rival, but I realised after the Nugget Bridge sequence that looking at what Gary, the rival, actually says in-game, he's actually not that much of a jerk. The fandom has just, gone with this whole he's a jerk thing and really exaggerated it. He's actually really nice and helpful in a lot of what he says in the game, but he's got this identity as a jerk because of the fandom established it so long ago. So ended up making G-Man a lot softer, a lot more likable as the story progressed. Even played with a sort of comical sort of rom-com element, as it were, with Nanka and G-Man. Ever since the Nugget Bridge thing. There was a good variety of different little jokes. I made original characters in it other than Nanka and her Pokemon. Got little funny quirks. I developed the Pokemon as well, like Jolt, sort of adventurous, rash, Pikachu. I came up with that character simply because it went well with Nanka's, in that Nanka was polite, curious, but a worrywart, and so that held her back. And Jolt the Pikachu's rash nature encouraged her to go forward, and Nanka, more careful nature, meant Jolt didn't get, harmed too often. But the characters developed, Dusty, the Butterfree, Devourer, the Victory Bell. Eventually, Victory Bell, that took ages. Ended up in a relationship sort of thing. Venom the Nidoqueen grew an attachment to stones. Iron the Eevee, later Vaporeon, loved fashion sort of thing, and grew close friends with Stretchy, the constantly posing Hitmonlee. And there was and really liked a lot of the characters. Melody, the perverted lesbian Jigglypuff, was certainly one which was a great source of comedy. Though I actually did a little sort of thing judging based on how much I enjoyed using the Pokemon in battle and actually the personality of the Pokemon. And I think it was Arid the Sandslash was actually my favourite of them, if I calculate it that way. And I really did like Arid the Sandslash. He was a very energetic, jolly sort of Pokemon, so it meant a lot of fun. But I just ended up throwing myself into it, namely because there was a readership to interact with on a constant basis. The interactive element really sort of gave me a resolve to keep going at it, and so Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure ended up being a lot more of my time. Further motivating me to dedicate myself more to it than anything else was, of course, Miiverse's coming doom with the whole Nintendo Switch coming out and everything. So ironically, as the Switch came out, I threw myself even more into doing the Wii U and 3DS activities of utilising Miiverse. I'm glad that I did it. Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse adventure has been an absolute blast. It has been a wonderful experience. And it's one I want to try and do again. in the future with both more Nanka's Miiverse Adventures of other games and a sequel to Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure, which I did hint in a little epilogue sequence on Miiverse. Of course, I have to figure out where to upload it, sort of thing. So far, the ideas of having separate uploads to DeviantArt, FanFiction.net, and another verse site called Closed Verse, but these are ideas at the moment. My main aim at the moment has been rewriting Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure, mostly just adding a few more details and correcting spelling mistakes, and actually re-uploading it to places. It's a finished story now. The questions have all been answered, sort of thing, and Nanka's choices got made for her by the readership. And it's a finished story that I hope for other people to be able to enjoy, if not for the interactive element, but just to see how things have progressed and such. And of course, another thing I've been working on is getting getting drawings as well as coloured versions of the drawings uploaded, which I will continue to do so. But yeah, Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure, absolutely wonderful experience, and yeah, I wasn't sure quite where I was going to go with this conversation. I just kind of explained what it was. But I feel it's kind of you had to be in the moment sort of thing. But hopefully people will be able to at least read it later when I do upload it. And I'll be sure to mention that when I do re-upload the finished director's cut version of the entire series. It'll be slow, but it should all be done before the every single bit before the end of the first half of the year. I was going to say before the end of April, but you never know what may happen. So I'm just going to say before the end of June, I'll probably have uploaded everything for the Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure director's cut. Anyway, this tea time has gone on a tad longer than I wanted. I wanted it to be 15 minutes, but I guess this just gives me more time to show off the Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure artwork I've done. Anyway, time to try some English Rose. That really does sizzle at the back of your tongue. It is just a really nice little sort of English breakfast with flavouring. But it's strange, the sizzling, it's like having a skip on the back of your tongue, and then you get this sort of this little berry flavour. Not strong like very berry, but a very slight one. I'm not sure if I would prefer it with milk or without. It's decent enough with milk, but the flavour of the rose may be stronger without milk. I would say I would have to try that, but I think I just drank the last of it. Anyway, that was my English Rose tea. And of course, this was my tea time on Nanka's Pokémon Miiverse Adventure. And if everything has gone correctly, this should be uploaded on New Year's Day. So, Happy New Year's, everyone, and cheerio!